That's in the top 1% because it's consistent. It's this long-running creative idea and positioning. It's incredibly powerful, which people struggle at with.
Could we play music to Cheese as it aged to see if we could change its molecular structure?
Welcome to That's What I Call Marketing. I am your host, Conor Byrne. And of course, this is the podcast where you will hear from the leading lights in the marketing world and listen to their unique insights. Well, I am coming to you today backstage at the Round Room of the Mansion House here in Dublin, a phenomenal venue. And it is just after the Radiocentre Sounding Out event, which is a phenomenal event put together by Kieran Cunningham. Definitely one of the must-go-to events in the marketing calendar here. And we were here to talk about all things audio. Of course, if you enjoyed today's episode or any of the episodes of That's What I Call Marketing, and take a few seconds to just hit the 5-star button, it really does help. Those reviews are a massive help to us. And of course, if you follow us, it means when the next episode lands, you will get a notification. You don't even have to go looking for it. It will come find you. So that really does help us in terms of reaching a new and engaged community of marketers just like you. Now, after the event, I was lucky to grab 2 of today's speakers to chat to them about audio. First up is Andrew Tindall. Now, you will know Andrew, of course. He is the Senior Vice President of Global Partnerships at System One, and he is a top voice, a leading voice on LinkedIn, where he posts every single day about marketing, and he definitely loves it. Wanted to talk to Andrew today about Listen Up, and we get into a lot of the topics that he brought up today at the event. So we're going to get into that, and we're also going to talk about the creative consistency score that they have just released. And I do ask Andrew if he should free the content. It makes sense if you listen to my recent episode with Andrew Hassiger from Green Hat. So we are going to go back over to the stage now as they're getting ready to close the event, and I sit down with Andrew Tindall from System One. Andrew, thanks a million for joining me on That's What I Call Marketing. Appreciate you hanging back and chatting to me. I'm sure you have other places you'd much rather be in Dublin.
No. One, I love Dublin, and 2, I love Guinness, and 3, I love radio.
Yeah.
Like, I do a lot of work in digital and TV and out of home, but I nervously admit radio is my real kind of, I love radio, and it's completely overlooked.
So I love radio too, right? And
Okay.
I completely agree with you. And it's not just because I'm here at the Radiocentre event. Like I the power of it, and like years and years and years ago, I'm old, but I used to do radio fundraising events, right? And the power of storytelling on radio is phenomenal, and you could see it immediately in responses to donations. And so I've always had this. People I worked with used to call it like the theatre of the mind. So I've seen it, and I believe it. And so, for me, radio advertising is such a great opportunity, but maybe somewhat underutilized in parts.
Completely. So, theatre of the mind, my old professor at business school used to call it that. Possibly my passion comes from him, because he grew up in radio. And the issue is, let's frame it as a opportunity with radio. There's efficiencies and there's effectiveness here. The efficiency is the less fun part. Huge reach.
Yeah.
It's cheap as hell, and it's possibly as engaging as audiovisual now.
Yeah.
Because really, not many people are now watching TV ads, are they? They're listening to them.
They're listening to them, yeah, 100%.
There's some great research in Thinkbox and ITV on that called earning attention. And then the effectiveness of radio, because of that ability to cause similar emotions and tell stories, you've got this super cheap broad reach medium that is, you can tell stories and create emotions and create those long and short-term brand effects. You see it in Les Binet and Peter Field's work with the IPA. It fits perfectly on all the charts where they show is a medium better for long or short-term effects.
Yeah.
Radio's always bang in the middle.
Yeah.
Because it's brilliant at doing both.
And you can have creative on radio that is aimed at both. Like, you can have big brand building stuff, but you can really like efficient and really kind of call to action.
And with the theatre of the mind, you don't have to hire a helicopter. You just have to find a helicopter sound.
You
can do all sorts of crazy shit with it.
You played some ads for us, and one of the things I know, Listen Up, and we'll talk a bit about Listen Up because it is a great piece of research. But the idea of kind of branding early and brand often, right? But you played, which was one of your favourite ads, and I love it as well, the Weetabix ad.
Yeah.
But the brand doesn't come in till about halfway through.
Yeah. For people watching, can we then link out to they can hear this ad maybe?
Yeah, I think we're going to have to.
We'll put it in the comments or something like that. True. So there's this amazing Weetabix ad, which I think is one of the best audio ads I've ever heard, and technically one of the highest scoring in all our testing at System 1. We've tested a load of radio ads globally now, look, the scene is this Essex builder, and he's speaking to Julius Caesar, and he's done the tiling for Rome, essentially. Yeah. Fucking hilarious. I've watched that 30 times. I play it at every radio conference or whatever I go to. The branding doesn't come in till halfway through, despite all the research showing that actually, if you want to get ad recall and drive short-term effects from listening up, you want to be branding early.
Yeah.
Why is that still incredibly effective? Well, it's because it's brilliantly creative, attracts and sustains broad attention.
Yeah.
So when you've got that creative power, you've got captivation, you've charmed the audience, you don't need to do the lazy thing, which is brand up front.
Yeah.
Would be my honest answer. But I'm talking that is like top 1% of ads where they've got this creative idea that's been running.
Well, I was going to say
because it's that fluent device, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's this Tyler's like, this Essex builder is like, look, I'm not actually going to do the accent. I've done your tile, Julius Caesar or whatever, and he's amazed. He's like, what? Rome wasn't built in a day. He's like, well, no, I had my Weetabix this morning.
Yeah. 3. I love the way it's 3 as well.
Incredible, incredible. That's in the top 1% because it's consistent. It's this long-running creative idea and positioning. So it's incredibly powerful, which people struggle at with doing on platforms other than TV, including digital and out of home. It's incredibly right-brained and entertaining, and it also helps that they're a massive brand.
Yeah.
Ross the Reeves effect. We all want to listen to Weetabix. So everyone else should really focus on how do you get your brand assets in, not your logo or your name up front, but your plethora of assets up front. Weetabix, with that level of creativity, they can get away with it.
Yeah. And I guess Specsavers is probably, when you've got that longevity, but then you have to start somewhere. So think about, what is your
how do you build?
Exactly.
How do you build that positioning and the long-term idea, and that what Orlando would call a fluent device. I agree.
Now, I did want to ask you about fame, because there seemed to be a bit of slightly different views on fame. And I can't ask you about what Craig talked about, but Craig and Bridget. Yeah. He was saying, you don't want to be Beyonce famous, you want to be Xerox famous, right? But you talked about fame, I think slightly differently.
I did,
What's your perspective on fame?
I view, look, we want brands to be, we measure brands by through fame, feeling and fluency. Fame being how salient they are, feeling being how much emotion they can hold, because that influences that System 1 pathway, hence the name on the agency, and fluent being distinctive. It's kind of our branding of it all. That feeling, that difference between what fame means, slight difference where I often talk about fame through a lens of what Les, Burnett and Peter Field have always called it, where or Paul Feldwick or everyone's coming for. Campaigns need to create fame, which in that definition is people talking about you. Yeah. People sharing about you. Or technically it's you feeling like people are talking about you. Whereas that's very hard to track. So what you actually end up tracking is salience. Yeah. But the pure definition of what I would say is fame is people talking about you. How you measure that is salience. Yeah. Yeah. Or in another word, spontaneous brand recognition and stuff like that. And it is hard.
Look, it is hard for brands to get to those levels of fame, because I think but strong creativity can do it. Like a really good, strong creative idea in and of itself can be fame. It doesn't necessarily have to be a famous person. I think Yorkshire Tea obviously is a brilliant example of fame done well, but it was the idea, things done proper, that allowed them to be famous.
They got the foundations right, and insight-driven positioning, a creative idea with legs, executed over a very long time. And I'm halfway through. I've spent 2 weeks writing an article, a column, which I had an idea as I was very drunk, and wrote most of it while I was drunk. Is it Oscar Wilde that says write drunk, edit sober? Yeah. Playing that one quite hard at the moment. So this whole idea of moodang. Have you seen moodang? The greased up hippo that's on like TikTok and Instagram.
Okay, I'm gonna have to.
The world famous hippo. Dude, you might be showing your age there a little bit. Do you have TikTok?
No, I do have TikTok, but I'm looking at hurricanes from Florida. Like that.
Oh,
that's
sure.
my
We've
news
got
feed.
different feeds. Okay.
Yeah.
Mine's guys and hippos. So there's this really popular hippo. Sounds insane, from Thailand. Look, it's got billions and billions of views.
Okay.
It's the world's most famous thing right now. And brands are trying to jump on that and use moodang in their campaigns, quite like using a celebrity in your campaigns.
Yeah.
But brands shouldn't do that. Brands should create their own celebrities. Brands should try to become famous themselves. A great example is Kevin the Carrot for Aldi.
Yeah.
They created Kevin. They could have hired, I don't know, any celebrity, Beyonce, and put her in the ads, but she'll eventually leave. Or brands are immortal. Celebrities and humans aren't.
Yeah.
Beyonce might get a PR disaster and you're screwed.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I'm not going to...
I'm not going there either. Allegedly. System 1 was taken down. What happened?
But you get my point.
Yeah.
Brands need to build their own celebrities via brilliant creative ideas executed over a long time in a right-brained, entertaining way.
Okay, now this is why I wanted to get on to left brain, right brain, because you talked about it today. I think I hope most people know about it, but just if people don't, and again, people can find Orlando's writings on the IPA website.
Yes,
so definitely worth reading. But kind of the left brain, right brain, and why it matters.
So we should probably stop calling it left and right brain because it winds up some people and gives them ammo. But let's just carry on. But I hadn't changed my slides because the slides I presented today, I hadn't looked at those in a while, and then I was like, oh. Anyway, look. There's this concept of brain lateralization. An old way of looking at brain lateralization would be your two hemispheres of your brain do different things. It's not true. They do things differently. So it's not like your left brain is your numbers person and your right brain up, your left switches off. No, it's not the case. They just do things differently. A great example is if you're ever in the park and bird watching. I don't know if you ever bird watching in the park. I don't either, but imagine you are.
Yeah. I'm of an age, so you...
Yeah, right. I'm looking at moodang. You're bird watching. Like, come on. So there's a bird. If you ever watch a bird picking at seeds, they will be looking at the ground with their left eye, and their right eye will be looking at their surroundings because they're looking at the seed where to peck, and then they peck for the seed, and the right eye they're looking at the surroundings.
How do you know this?
I've got it the wrong way around. They look for the seed with their left eye, and they look at the surroundings with their right eye with their left eye, because their left eye is controlled by the right hemisphere.
Right, yeah.
The right hemisphere is a physically different. If we cut you open and had a look right now, your right hemisphere is heavier. It is physically different. This is all the work of Dr. Ian McGilchrist, if anyone really wants to get into it. And your right hemisphere is more sensitive to noradrenaline, which is our reward for completing vigilance. So our right hemisphere, and hence the left eye, is looking for a broad perspective on the world. Or looking at where maybe the next meal will be to go and peck at. The left hemisphere is more so controlled by the right eye, which is looking at the seeds, is more sensitive to things like dopamine, which is a reward for completing a task. Hence why, scrolling on TikTok, vaping, this kind of shit posting on X or Twitter or whatever you call it. They're quite plugged in tasks that give us dopamine hits. That's very left-brained. Advertising that speaks to people who are in the market, so to capture the short-term effects, capturing market demand, that's more associated with what we call left-brained advertising, because it's about completing that task. It's about speaking to the half-interested.
Yeah.
It's salesmanship. The advertising that's going to do brand building and build future demand is advertising that's going to attract your broad attention. Entertaining advertising. It's going to speak to people who aren't already interested. And for me, I read that in Lemon and Lookout, Orlando's books. In fact, my old boss at Diageo gave me the book, and I was oh shit, I'm gonna have to go work there, and I quit, and I went and worked with John in Orlando instead. Didn't mean to do that, obviously. And I just think that is a fundamental unlock between creative and media, because now media has separated. I think creatives still want to get quite close to media. Media's separated themselves so much from the creative side of the world. I mean, agencies used to sell media, do the creative for free. Like, that understanding of how advertising a creative belongs in the media funnel and how it works, that is the language to knot together creativity and media.
And do you think that's not happening enough? I see it. People, someone I particularly work with is brilliant at it. She's really, really good. She gets it. But do you think, like, generally it's not, the connection's not strong enough?
No, I think agencies getting wrapped up into bigger and bigger agencies is probably making it worse. There's some great platforms and brands that are obviously doing it quite well, but also big tech starting to own advertising more and more. There's even silos within their businesses around client services, creative teams, media teams, who controls the algorithm, this kind of stuff. So no, I think there's a lot of stuff to do. Yeah, I mean, it took 10 years for the long and short of it to truly reach its peak power. Orlando wrote Lemon 5 years ago. Give him 5 more years, man. 5 more years.
It's kind of terrifying. And even then, like, I talked, and you spoke to Mark and V on the Sleeping Barber podcast, like, they'd say in North America, actually, long and short of it probably isn't well enough known. And then I saw Dave Tiltman recently on Work saying, like, when we go to the States, people politely, I don't think they're polite, say, yeah, that's fine, but give us some US-based data, because a lot of the stuff is from other parts of the world.
Yeah, so. This is my living nightmare. So the issue is, strategy and planning is a British export. If you find killer big time, I'm probably going to upset a few people, but it is. I think it is, right? Do we all? Yeah, maybe some Americans won't agree. And then you can see this in some big senior roles in the US. They're actually British strategists as well. They're expats. And because of that, things like the IPA and our data, Radiocentre UK has been collecting amazing data for like 10 years as well. There's unparalleled amount of robust data in the UK to do studies with. That's why they were able to write long and short of it. Yeah. That's why I've been able to listen up with the Radiocentre data. Similar to Orlando Wood, all his work, you can build on this stuff. And there's not that much data, similar data, globally. There's other examples like Effie and stuff like that. So a lot of these studies aren't with US data, and then US people say, "Oh, that's not relevant." Yeah. I get it though, because the US is 52 different markets.
Yeah. I did work with a US company.
It's difficult. Like the average ad effectiveness, because we measure TV advertising on broad of the total audience, the national representative. It's lower in the US slightly. No, not slightly. You see a lot less 5 stars and 4 stars in the top System 1 testing, because it's so much harder to find a universal positioning and idea these days that all 52 of those markets in the US are going to agree with. Yeah. So anyone that's doing amazing work in the US are like absolute advertising legends. Yeah. And it's very difficult to do.
It is, and also a lot of the ads over there are for medical products, and like 50% of the ad is about how it might kill you.
It's also, yeah.
I love that.
Yeah, well, literally by law, you have to put in 50% of the time has to be about the side effects.
Yeah. That's my favourite thing when I used to travel to the States was stick the tally on.
How much of it is medication advertising, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a huge amount.
So that's a massive opportunity. Imagine if a brand comes in with an entertaining idea that you feel familiar with.
Yeah. Entertaining.
A breath of fresh air.
Make it enjoyable. We have to. We also talk about, like, radio is incredibly trusted as a medium, and in Ireland more so. Like, we saw some of the stats here. Like, we love our radio.
The Irish love the radio. Yeah, there's probably there's probably like a really wanky cultural perspective on why you could write all day about that. I mean, I don't fully understand it. All I know is that Irish marketers spend about 3 to 4 times more on radio.
Well, you
in
know
terms of
what
the size
used to
of their
happen
plan.
here? I don't know if it still does on the regional radio stations. They used to read out the death notices.
Oh, okay.
So people would tune in to your local radio station in the
To see who's
morning at
died?
like to see who's died. Did you know them?
how
Or make
the-
sure you weren't on
How
it.
would you start your day? Like
I know. Well, it's better than then going to bed because I might be on the radio tomorrow.
Holding around a
Yeah, so
candle.
I think- I
How
don't
old
know.
are you, man? What's going on?
Have you ever heard of Peg Sayers? Google her. I think, but I don't know. There's no scientific evidence to back that up at all.
No,
but I do
no,
think
no.
there's just that there's an inherent thing that we were drawn to the radio. Local radio was so powerful. You know, the local stories were storytellers. So I think that's part of it.
But we also talked about as well how Irish marketers spend more on radio. They still don't spend enough. So they spend about 13% of their media budget on radio, of their mix. There's some great research from the CRA, the Commercial Radio blah 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 in Australia.
Yeah, association.
Association.
Gonna go with
probably.
that.
CRA, amazing team. They did some amazing research with Rob Britton and Mark Ritson with the Australian Effie data.
Oh, yeah,
to show.
yeah.
Did you see that?
Yeah, it's
That's
great.
incredible.
Yeah.
They showed that if you just put 11% of your media plan to radio, you double the business
I know.
effects or
Yeah,
something
yeah.
crazy like that.
I was on to Kieran when it came out, and I was
It's
like,
a-
"Have you seen
You
this?"
need
He
to
goes,
get
"Oh
them-
yeah."
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
I know. I was luckily in Australia the week after, and I was like, they were at this event. I felt like I was meeting like celebrities.
Yeah.
And Rob Britton's a complete legend, and then Mark Ritson, who champions radio, pushing that and being the festival is great. But the optimum mix that you've seen for ROI is actually 20% of your plan for
Right.
radio. So there's room to grow. You know, let's love radio more.
And again, be creative, be enjoyable, be entertained. Like, it doesn't all have to be funny. I think humor is really important, but it doesn't all have to be funny. Funny is hard. We know
Yeah.
funny is hard, but you can be
And risky sometimes.
Yeah, you can be enjoyable though, and that's
Yeah,
okay,
yeah.
right?
You
People
don't have to
enjoy
be
it.
doing like the hilarious Weetabix ads. You can focus on telling stories and go from there.
Yeah. I want to talk to you about the creativity consistency score.
I refuse. Who told you about that?
top secret.
yeah.
So I've been a
It's
huge.
because no, actually, I'm not going to make that joke. We've been recorded. Never mind. No, go on.
So I've been a huge fan of David Taylor and the Brand Gym for a long, long time,
Yeah.
and he is consistent. He talked about consistency and fresh consistency, and so it's really interesting to see you come out with the IPA and kind of announce this creative consistency score.
Yeah.
What was it that kind of made you guys go in and say we need to talk about consistency?
Okay. Yeah. So this has gone very well for us. We launched it yesterday, and we have a metric that we track for thought leadership because
You measure everything.
I'm in the fucking the matrix of effectiveness. Yeah. I build effectiveness reports to market our effectiveness agency, and also track the effectiveness of the campaigns and the effectiveness reports. It's insane. We have a metric anyway. We're not going to reveal what metric it is because someone will have some fucking feedback. Anyway, over the past, it launched yesterday. It launched yesterday, and we have, in a day, we've beaten that metric. For what it took one of our last most popular reports a year to do.
Oh, really?
It's been absolutely huge. I can't quite believe it. It's been absolutely huge. Partly because Matt Ritson jumped on it. Partly because our LinkedIn channels are now really pumping. And
They are.
That's like a more tactical strategy, but it's working.
Yeah.
But mostly, we are getting better at how to make great thought leadership that the industry needs. And it starts like great marketing. It's born from an insight that we all know that consistency is works.
Yeah.
But no one's that consistent. Really, if you get down to brass tacks of it.
Yeah.
Like John Lewis just had to bring back their famous tagline.
Yeah.
Mezzo Saatchi and Saatchi. Lloyd's TSB just got rid of their horse in their advertising.
Had they not? Are they bringing it back, or had they? I
No,
thought they
no.
brought it back then.
They just got rid of it.
Oh, recently,
It might come
right.
back, I don't know. But
It
they've
definitely
not
will.
in the recent brand campaign. So there's a lack of confidence in consistency. It's more of a feeling. There's less lack of confidence. So then we partnered with the IPA. It took a year. I I remember running around the Arsenal stadium with my housemate. I get a flurry of dopamine whilst running, and I often like hard pitch him shit when I'm running. I was like, dude, what do you think? Dude. And basically, because System 1 measure every UK TV ad as it goes live for creative effects, to do proper consistency research, you'd have to have every ad over a long period of time. We've now been doing this for 5 years. So I was like, we can probably be the only people that can do this. And for once, put some data and empirical data and credible data behind it. And the way to best do that as well, that we've seen with other pieces of research that we've done, is to link different data sets. When different data sets agree, you know you're onto something. So we brought in brand strength data, and then speaking of credible, the IPA's data bank. I was having lunch with someone from the IPA, and I don't know, it's probably full of dopamine from wine or something then. And I was kind of like telling him about this idea, and it's Lawrence Green, and he was like, that's incredible, actually.
Let's do it.
Let's do that. And then, we've created compound creativity, which is a new research on creative effectiveness. It's got creative consistency, and it's going incredibly well.
It is great. And look, I think maybe the fact that people are interested in it means there's something going on where we're like, look, I know we need to do this, but maybe it needed the score element. People I don't know. Do people love that? I don't know.
The framing of it.
Yeah, but it's like future demand. Like, you know what I mean? Like James's future demand.
Yeah.
I think framing is
actually
part of it.
Yeah. Yes.
What, you're going to say you did it first? No.
No. James uses the word future and present demand, but he wasn't the first. It's amazing.
Wrote the book.
Anyway. Yes. So one, we're obsessed with metrics. If we can't measure something, we won't get better at it. So putting a metric on it, creative consistency score. Technically, we can go and measure that for your brand and let you know how you do. So that's also quite an interesting commercial opportunity.
I was going to say that's a whole new revenue stream.
So we test ads and we predict.
Hello.
And we have to. There's going to be one person that watches it. It'll be John Evans, because I'll hold him, my boss. I'll be like, watch it, mate. Look how good I am. So. What were we talking? We measure advertising, and then we also give consultancy and guidance to our clients about how to improve and understand. We have very many lenses that we do that through: left and right brain, distinctiveness, this kind of stuff. A new big one for us is going to be consistency. Where is that fluent device gone? Why is this tagline changed? This new idea. It's ditching your celebrity you've used for 10 years. Here's the data. So it's almost like we really wanted to do this to have a proper point of, because we hold ourselves to quite high standards when it comes to our guidance, because we always want to tie it back to proper thought leadership, that we call it, proper empirical level. There isn't that really for consistency. So we've created that, and now we can use it with our clients.
And look, what's great about it is, like, System 1, all the research that gets put out, and even, the posts that you or John or whoever, even if you're a brand, I often think about smaller brands who, like, I don't have the same budgets. Like, even if you don't have a budget to afford a System 1 testing, there's enough, I think, in some of the consistency research you put out. You can read that and you can learn a ton that you can actually apply. So, I would say that, like, that it is very helpful, is very useful.
If I ever get hit in the head and wake up and I'd probably start a B2B marketing agency, because what we're doing at System 1 is essentially our core marketing team. I think it's some of the thought leadership strategy that we're doing around that. We've made the conscious decision that some people sometimes are like, you're giving too much away for free. You should be charging.
I was going to ask you, though, have you ever thought, so my last recent podcast, because this will go out a few weeks, but was with Andrew Hausiger from Green Hat, and they did some research in B2B buyer journey. It wasn't even buyer journeys, it's better than that. But one of the things he's big on is ungating the content.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah. But yours is gated.
Ungating?
Yeah.
Oh, no. You need those delicious leads. Maybe that's the metric I track. Who knows? Oh, it's all coming out.
Here.
Oh.
over the weekend when you're here, listen to the episode, and I'd love to get your thoughts genuinely on.
Okay, ungate in the content.
Free the
only
content.
reason I might want to do that is because freelancers don't have business emails.
Yeah.
And they're like, why can't I get this? I'm like, I'm so sorry, here it is. I'm not trying.
Yeah.
It's just technically being able to reach out to people and convert that is useful for us. But also, I spent a year with my team.
They're gone.
With like a team of 4 people.
Yeah.
Using data from over 4,000 ads measured on over 600,000 consumers with 100 years of data from the IPA. I hired someone to get this research over the line. It's cost us so much. If you really want to say, this is where I hope John Evans has tuned out, because if he sits down and does a P&L on it, I'm like, yeesh.
Yeah, it was a good idea. Good idea.
The least people can do is actually respect
you an
that.
email
Go,
address.
Here's my email. And like, also, if you give us your email, I'll send you the next cool one.
I'm not waiting a year. Listen, I'm gonna let you go. But my last question is, it was kind of funny. You had the post where you were holding up the sign.
Yes, only marketers get bored of ads.
Yeah,
but I've got it here. No, I haven't.
Well, no, I was gonna. You have to do one in Dublin.
In Dublin,
beside the Molly Malone statue or something. I'm gonna be annoyed if you don't.
What?
The Molly Malone statue.
I don't know what that means.
Right, okay, you need to go. Right, if you here.
Sorry, mate, I haven't been on the sightseeing buses. What does that mean?
Next week, if I don't see a LinkedIn post with you at the sign.
Do you know, I'll tell you something quite funny. There's a very large fashion brand that saw me post that yesterday and reached out and was like, "Can you do one for us?"
With their brand.
Yeah, we'll send you the really expensive clothes to wear. I mean, I've gone, yeah, but I'm like, what are you on about? If I can pull off a fashion collab, I don't know. I mean, that was not on my 2024
KPIs.
Yeah. Look, mate, I need to find some cardboard. I'll do one. I what do I say?
I don't know. You just like write shit on it when you go
just
home.
for anyone
it
that's
doesn't matter.
listening, if you ever seen because we've just. I forgot we've been recording, really. Look, we've just been having a nice chat. There's this guy called Dude with a Sign on Instagram. Yeah, that's where it comes from. Yeah. Where he holds like a board up and it says something mildly controversial. Something that we've all been thinking, but no one says it on his board or whatever. So yeah, I've been doing a few of those in marketing.
Someone had a proper pop at you over what you wrote, like didn't they?
Because
I was like, are you serious?
I'm incredibly dyslexic. I trained as a doctor to start off with before I got into marketing. That's like a horrible mix. I look, my handwriting's terrible. No one can see what I just the first one I did, I held the board up and I got like Canva to do it.
Yeah.
And someone was like, "You're."
I know, because you. I was so funny. I had such a laugh going.
Yeah. They really took it offense. Like you're a fake.
You're a fake. Yeah. Like outrageous.
I was like, you're missing the point. No one on the street was reading the sign anyway. It's for to put online. Anyway, anyone will try and they're all coming for me, mate, aren't they?
Yeah, they are. But listen, that's a good sign. They were talking about you. They're literally taking the stage down from underneath us here. Yeah. So we better go. Listen, thanks a million for stopping by.
No,
really appreciate it. Yeah.
Love radio, love Dublin, and love this conference as well.
Listen,
great to meet you.
Enjoy the weekend as well.
Oh, well, yeah. I'm going to the Storehouse tomorrow.
Okay, good. They'll look after you there.
Oh, it's good.
And Molly Malone. Go find Molly Malone.
I'm going to nod like I know what that means still. Yeah. Right. See ya.
Thanks a million. Lovely to meet you. Cheers. Well, brilliant to chat to Andrew. He's going to have a lot of fun in Dublin, I think, this weekend. But a really great guy, such energy. Look, clearly passionate, loves what he does. I think he's better off in advertising. I think we need him more here than medicine ever needed him. So really great. And look, I love Andrew's energy. I love his passion about marketing, and I love the fact that he had this idea about doing the creative consistency score. And look, System 1 go deep on their data, deep on the insights, and they do love sharing it. Now, let's see if they free the content another time. Well, next up, I get to speak to Steve Keller. And Steve is the Sonic Strategy Director at SiriusXM and is widely regarded as a leading expert in the field of sonic branding. He has decades of experience and is really worked with some of the biggest brands in the world on their sonic strategies. And we're going to talk today, but again, some of the stuff that Steve brought up in his conversation today, the power of audio, how you think about building your audio and sonic identity for you and your brand. And what's great about what Steve goes through now is these are things that you can do even if you can't afford to find and hire a sonic agency, right? Some of us can't afford that. So how do we start thinking about the universe of our audio and the experiences our consumers have with audio with our brands? And it really insightful and some great tips here from Steve. Steve, thanks for staying behind and joining me on That's What I Call Marketing. Really appreciate it. They were literally, I was going to do it on the stage, but they were taking the stage from underneath us. So
that's what happens when you stick around to the end and close the party out. They're putting chairs up on the table, but it just means we're two guys that love it. And
yes,
we don't want to leave.
We don't want to leave. Yeah. The place is literally empty outside. Listen, I wanted to ask, there's so much to ask you about what you went through today. But first of all, I have to ask, Shania Twain, Dublin?
So here's the story. I'll try to keep it as brief as possible. But I had three mates of mine that worked in the music industry in Nashville, where I lived at the time. And we were talking about where would we want to be New Year's Eve 1999.
Yeah.
We went into 2000. And we all thought, in a little pub in Ireland. Nice. So we're like, that's what we're going to do. So we got our tickets. We landed in Dublin. We rented a car. We were going to do the Ring of Kerry. And the trip was going to take us, we were going to be in Cork for New Year's Eve. So we got into a lovely little hotel in Cork. New Year's Eve came. We set out, and it was like every pub we stopped at was closed.
Oh,
You're like, what? All the little local pubs were closed. It's getting closer and closer to midnight. And in the center of downtown Cork, we found basically a tourist pub that was open.
You were trying to avoid
with a large group of Japanese tourists. I love Japan, but it was just Japanese tourists drinking Heineken. And Shania Twain was playing on the jukebox. So here's four guys from Nashville in this pub in Ireland. Not exactly what we were thinking it was going to be, but still turned out to be a great evening and loved the time here. But
that's so funny.
That's the story.
That's brilliant. Well, I know Fiona Curtin from Heineken Ireland will love that story. So, she's like, there's another one for Guinness.
There you go.
Yeah. You mentioned something today, and I was just fascinated with it, that hip-hop music had the ability to change the flavor of cheese.
Yeah.
Please explain that for people who didn't hear it. That's amazing.
So the idea behind the promotion was, could we play music to cheese as it aged to see if we could change its molecular structure? It was based on a piece of research that had already been done for a couple of university researchers in Switzerland. And what they had found with the different music that they had tested was that hip hop seemed to have the biggest effect. So that's where we started. And then I have to explain the psychoacoustic science behind it. It's less about the music and it's more about the vibration.
Yeah.
So as cheese ages, you have microorganisms and bacteria that are developing. That's really what gives the cheese its aroma, its texture, its flavor. So we basically vibrated the cheese with a consistent tempo and frequencies, which was in the playlist of hip hop music that we put together. It changed the development of the microorganisms. So then when we did our blind taste test afterwards with our control cheese, we found that it had significantly changed the aroma and flavor. And Cheez-It used that sonically aged cheese for a promotion. They called it Aged by Audio. Cheez-It. Put the special limited edition boxes of Aged by Audio Cheez-It for sale on the web. They sold out in, I think, 12 days. There's a couple of boxes maybe for $150 on eBay still. But as you can imagine, there was a lot of earned media around that. It was great for the brand. And I often use that as an example of how when we think about the power of audio in advertising, it's not simply audio on the channel.
Yeah.
It's an audio first idea where audio is just part of what excites and connects with listeners, users, consumers. And we're always looking for that approach to audio.
Yeah.
Something obviously that can be used on our platforms, but it's an idea that's even bigger than the platforms and can have a really powerful effect.
I just thought it was amazing. Like when you were talking about that today, I was like, that's brilliant, because there's so much you can do with that idea, that starts with audio. And Cheez-Its have only come to Ireland in the last couple of weeks, and I've had my first pack, but I look.
We'll have to work on another batch of
maybe
sonically
Irish
aged
music.
cheese.
Yeah.
We'll try that.
Yeah, I'm up for it.
With the right beat and vibration, I think we could have an impact here.
Amazing. Yeah. You touched on something there that you talked about today, and it was kind of like the universe of sound, right? And I think sometimes we think about audio, one-dimensionally is unfair probably, but we might go immediately to radio, an ad, or you know what I mean, or we might go to sonic branding. But you talked about that full universe, and you're like, again, you had this brilliant slide. It was like, oh, all these areas that you have that. Can you talk a bit about kind of that universe?
Sure, because there's so many places that we can reach our audience through their ears. We often like to say that you can close your eyes, but it's hard to close your ears. So you think about, through the course of our day, where we experience audio. At home, maybe through a connected device, earbuds, in the automobile, in a grocery store, in a restaurant, at an event venue, when we're using the UX or UI on an app. So these are all places where we can kind of reach into consumers' ears and hearts and minds. And I think the point that I'm trying to make with this universe of sound is that this is the sonic experience of your brand.
Yeah.
And brands are really intentional with their visual representation because they know that consistency over time creates this memory of the brand.
Yeah.
It brings the brand top of mind when you see the brand colors, or you see the design of the package or the logo. But there's this whole other universe of sound where you can do the same thing. You can build those memory structures with brand anthems or brand themes or functional sounds or sonic logos or tie-ins with different voices or sound design. And the more you can be consistent with that experience in the more places, the more people will begin to recognize your brand with their eyes closed.
Yeah.
And how many times are we watching a television commercial and we get up to do something else?
Yeah.
And we're still hearing it.
Oh, 100%.
But can we recognize it if there's no identifiable sonic markers in that commercial?
I was talking to Peter Hammer in Australia just about work that he was doing. But when I was talking to him, I told him about a thing that I do with my kids in the car. So if we're going to, let's say, one of their sports matches and there's a Premier League match on, I will often plug my phone in to listen to the commentary. But then when half time comes, the ads play. And so we play a game in the car and I'm like, okay, guys, let's see if we can name the ad or the brand. Mm-hmm. It's so sad when I say it out loud, right? But it's really interesting because you're literally, because it is how you, like you say, people watch TV, but they go and they do something else. And, so that power of, listening to an ad without seeing it is incredible. And I love it. I think I'm going to do a whole series of kids in cars listening to ads.
Well, and we often talk about, in the digital world, how very often content is being skipped. So if you've got a sonic device where maybe it's something you can place at the beginning, and that ad comes on and you're only getting the first few seconds of it before someone skips, you're getting that identification there immediately. It's hard to skip it that fast. So at least you're getting that cue, making that association, keeping that memory structure alive. And we know that's what's going to affect your purchase in the long run. Yeah,
and it all is the cumulative effect. I think Grace Kite did something recently about the cumulative effect of all the things together.
All these channels. Yes.
And I think you're right. We immediately go to what's our brand guidelines, visual guidelines, but probably not enough brands have
A
kind of
sonic style guide.
Yeah.
Sure. Yeah.
But maybe brands are like, God, it's hard enough to get the brand visual identity done. We don't have the time or often maybe the budgets to do that. But like, I'm sure there has to be not shortcuts, but things they can do. I mean, you talked about some of the things today that they can be doing. Do you maybe go through some of those kind of steps?
Sure. Because look, the reality is, it's, I talk to brands all the time that say, well, we don't think about audio from a brand perspective because we're a visual brand.
Yeah.
I would say, do you advertise on television? Well, yes, we do. I said, so there's no sound in your TV ad? Well, don't be crazy.
Yeah, of course.
I was like, but what folks don't realize is that any time a sound is associated with your brand, you're creating a perception in the mind of the consumer.
Yeah.
And I think that's a mistake that we make quite often in marketing when we think that we can tell a consumer what a brand is, and that's going to be their perception of the brand.
Yeah.
It's what we say the brand is and how the consumer perceives it sometimes are two different things. So how do we align that? So when we think about the sonic identity of a brand and brands using sound already, I think it's just a matter of let's be intentional with the sound.
Yes.
I talk about sonic strategy, and I
Yeah.
say that that's very simply the blending of sound science and sound art to make sound decisions. So what are those sound decisions? And think about what's the perception that you're trying to put across to consumer? What is the behavioral outcome you're shooting for? How are you building your brand equity, and where does sound play into that? So I will encourage brands to just think about what are your brand values? What's your brand personality? And then think about sound through that lens. So choose pieces of music, choose a voiceover, choose sound design that not only communicates the emotion of the campaign, but something that can create, as I said, this sonic experience of your brand. And maybe it's not at that point a sonic logo, or maybe you don't have a bespoke brand theme, but at least now you're starting to build in consistency. So at the very least, what I would encourage brands to do is, again, as we said, most brands have a visual style guide. Think about what are guiding principles. What would be your guiding principles to choose a particular voice, a particular piece of music, a particular type of sound design, and let those guiding principles help you make those choices. Otherwise, you're left to your own whims, your personal preferences, whatever the director of the commercial may want, or the agency may want, or the CEO of the brand may want. And those could be very conflicting decisions.
Yeah.
So just trying to get on the same page is the start and half of the battle.
Yeah. And I think that is the thing. Start somewhere,
Yes,
right?
Exactly.
Make some decisions and, try stick with them. And like, I think voice is incredibly, I know some great, brands here. Like I remember I used to work in an agency with a telco brand here, O2 they were called at the time, but they had Gabriel Byrne, the actor, as now they could afford it, right?
Sure.
But my God, like it was so distinctive. It was so powerful, and they were very mindful about how they used him because they only had certain amount of time. But then they had a kind of a backup VO artist who they matched with Gabriel's voice. Right. It was so clever.
It doesn't have to be the same voice.
Yeah.
It's not like you're trying to sound like somebody you're not, but think about it like a family. If you talk to a family members very often, you say, oh, that's so-and-so's kid.
You can tell.
Why? Because of there's certain ways that they speak together. And I often talk to brands from an identity standpoint, talking about our voices. As we get to know each other, we get to recognize each other's voices. You can tell ultimately, is Steve happy? Is he sad? Is Conor excited about something today? Because I hear the inflection in your voice. We get to a point where you could yell at me from across the street. I would know it was you before I ever saw you. Well, imagine what would happen if every time we had a conversation, I had a different voice. My accent was different. My tonality was different. it was totally changed. Well, you'd think I was crazy. You probably wouldn't trust me.
Yeah.
But how many brands are doing that?
Yeah.
How often are they literally changing the voice that you hear, so you don't get to know them or recognize them, or their personality entirely changes?
It's really interesting as well, because it came up later on in the event today, where some of the kind of the digital audio experts were talking, and one of the guys said that, oh, we can give you a different accent in different parts of this country. This country's small, but we can do different accents in different part of the country. I was like, oh, that's really interesting. But is it, in the sense of, because then you're actually, if I'm in Cork, I'm hearing a different version of the brand, or can you have that family of brands that diverse? I don't know. Like, it's a very interesting thing.
Well, I think, tonality or timbre of voice and a dialect are very different things. I think you could have similar timbres of voices and different dialects. One of the things that we've focused on is this idea of sonic diversity. When we talk about diversity in advertising, we're very often, again, focused on what we see. And most brands have done a really admirable job of embracing diversity, of being more inclusive. But very often when you listen to ads, particularly for the general market, it's like, what are the voices that you hear? They're not always that diverse.
Yeah.
And what we found in our research is that diversity in voices actually makes the ads more inclusive for certain populations, and we don't really see negative effects from other populations.
Yeah.
So I think segmenting our marketing, that works. We know that when we identify with individuals, that we feel more represented, things feel more at home and more comfortable. But I think in our general market or mass market ads, we live in a multicultural world. Here's a country in Ireland where you have multiple dialects. Well, what would happen if the tonalities were matched, but we just heard different dialects where you might relate to that one more, I might relate to this individual more. I'm not going to think badly of the advertiser. I may actually think, well, that's interesting. They're appealing to a lot more people than I thought they would.
Yeah.
So again, it just kind of goes back to this intention and thinking intentionally about the type of voice that you're choosing, why, and how does that represent the brand.
And it's all kind of tying it all together. And like, I think I was saying to you before we met kind of over email that it feels like audio is kind of, I don't know if resurgence is the right word. I don't think it ever went away. I don't think in this country it ever did really. But there seems to be more of a focus on it. There seems to be more of a, I think brands are paying attention to it, or it's getting better anyway. But then you said something, I might get the stat wrong, but 25% of US brands don't show up in audio at all. I was surprised to hear that.
Yes. I was surprised to find, as I was doing some research before I came here for the conference, to see how big radio listening is in Ireland. Because in the U.S., the most recent research we had was that 31% of media consumption is audio.
Yeah.
So a really large portion. We saw that grow a lot during the pandemic.
Yeah.
As a lot of people moved away from screens. They leaned more into podcasts and digital streaming services, radio. So now, you see this massive listening audience, but in the U.S., only 8.8% of the media buys go towards audio. And as I said, 25% aren't even showing up there. So it's really undervalued as an advertising channel. And I think we would be better served, instead of kind of this adversarial relationship that sometimes happens where we're trying to say TV is bad, or CTV is bad, or radio is better than streaming, or whatever that is. All the data is telling us that if we combine channels, if we look cross-platform, we're amplifying everything. So this gets back to my idea of saying, let's think audio first. What are just some great creative campaigns where we have audio at the center, and then you've got a reason to tie into these platforms. You can increase your share of voice. That'll increase your share of market.
Yeah.
And everybody wins. So, it's more about collaborating and the brand sharing its voice in multiple places.
Yeah, and there were some wonderful examples shared today of kind of creative advertising on radio. And as I was saying to Andrew earlier on, I did work with Children's Miracle Network and on the radio fundraising initiatives they did. And we talked about kind of that theater of the mind, because you can create these moments and, people, they don't close their eyes because they might be driving their car, but their brain kind of starts to draw or paint the picture in their minds. It's incredibly, I've always had this kind of just belief, and I've seen it firsthand, the effect it can have, the power of actually being able to do that. And I'm not sure, I think sometimes radio or audio is kind of like, oh yeah, what's the radio at, as opposed to what you're saying is like, how's that idea, what is the central audio elements.
And I think another interesting thing about that theater of the mind is that not only can we use sound to create a visual impression, but with sound we're immersing ourselves in that. So imagine a television commercial that's showing me a destination with a particular beach where I'm seeing a particular background and I'm seeing particular kinds of people. Do that same ad through audio and I'm seeing people from my memory. I'm seeing places where I've been or want to go. And so I've created a place that I'm immersing myself in that I'm not doing that when I see it. And I think that's why some of the recent research that points to how attention with audio is a lot stickier than attention with visuals.
Yeah, no, it was amazing. And actually one of the other things I learned that period was the power of silence, and radio presenters never want silence because they're taught not to have dead air, right? And we were like, no, let the story hang. Just give it a moment. And it was just the power of the pause.
I mean, that's what draws us to music. Very often is that there are these dynamics. It's loud, it's soft, it gives you a moment to breathe. In electronic dance music, there's the drop. What is that? That's building it up to a point, and then it's gone, and then it hits you again, and everybody's waiting for that moment of that beat to bring you back into it. And we should think about how we craft our audio in the same way.
And we use music, don't we, in incredible ways, that we use music to either reinforce a mood we're in or create a mood we want to be in. I just think I'm phenomenal. I want to ask you about, and you were the only one to mention it today, AI.
I was that guy.
No, but like every other event I've been to, probably for the last like 6 or 9 months, AI is just like AI. So it was actually lovely in a way that it didn't.
Sure, I agree. I hated to break the glass there,
but it's needed to talk about it. Like the AI tools that exist now, are like, they're phenomenal. But where they were 3 months ago to where they are now is wildly different. So where they're going to be in 3 months' time is phenomenal. Again, somebody in the panel said, I don't think we should be worried about it. I was like, oh God, I don't mean worried in a scared way. I mean, I think we need to be thinking about how it's going to impact, I think, talent potentially, how you create things. I mean, I could effectively, I don't know if it would be a brilliant ad, but I could effectively go home today and create a radio ad. Right? I can use AI to help me do the copywriting. I can get a voiceover artist and AI. I can get free music, and I could make an ad. Again, it's not going to be very good, but I can do it.
Yet, we may get there.
Yeah.
So I think, to your point, this is something where, we shouldn't either put our heads in the sand and pretend that it's not there, or go to the other extreme of it's not going to have any impact on jobs or human talent. and try and find that place where we're looking to balance application with implication.
Yeah.
And so at Studio Resonate and SiriusXM Media over the past few years, we've been concentrating on not just, how do we operationalize AI, but what is the impact? So our research has been around kind of gamifying the use of AI with our creative teams to find out what's the implications for strategic talent management. I think in an age of AI, companies should be investing even more in their human capital in terms of helping their human capital understand how to use these tools, where the limitations are, where the quote unquote humans in the loop need to be. And we've concentrated a lot in our world on voice because we feel like that's one of the places where we're potentially seeing the biggest disruption. So how can we implement tools to benefit from cost efficiencies or scale, but at the same time being mindful of what the impact of that implementation might be on our human voice talent, on our brands and brand safety, and also on our diversity that we're really focused on. And so we're trying to develop a point of view through our research that helps us understand how best to use these tools, how to use them responsibly, and how to give our folks the opportunity to learn how to use them, to stress test them.
Yeah.
And to your point, they're only going to keep getting better. So we want to understand, where we need to be cautious. I could talk on and on, but I would say here's the one area that I'm waiting to see what's going to happen, and that's governmental regulation.
Okay.
Because I think if we get to a point where regulators say, if you are using AI in an advertisement, that must be disclosed.
Yeah.
In a visual ad, that's easy enough to do with a little bit of copy.
Yeah.
So how are you going to do that in an audio ad? You're going to have a disclaimer.
Yeah,
right?
like terms. Yeah.
What kind of brands usually have disclaimers? Well, brands like healthcare brands or insurance
Financially,
brands.
exactly.
And usually those disclaimers are warnings. They're seen as things that, maybe you don't ignore them. Maybe they're there. Imagine a world if AI voices are common, you're hearing these disclaimers at the end of all of these spots. I personally think regulation will kill the use of AI voices in spots unless there's provision for maybe a hybrid situation where if you're using a clone voice to maybe change up a tag or a price point or a location. So there's the human there's the human voice, but maybe the clone for a tagged difference. So that hybrid gets past the AI regulation. But to me, that's the thing that I have my eye on as far as what it may mean for the industry. But we've done a lot of other research around bias and how we hear human voices versus AI voices and all of that too.
And I'll ask you about that, but that's a really interesting point though about the regulation piece, because again, you think about like, let's say, I don't know, like a burger or a soft drink brand are not going to want to go, this ad was brought to you by it. You know what I mean? Like
you're eating up valuable ad real estate.
Yeah. And you sound like a bank.
Yes. And and look, I think as the tools get better, they're going to get easier to use. But what we're finding right now is that some of the cost benefits of using, let's say, a cloned voice or even a synthetic voice, those benefits are lost when you have to spend more time using tools to get the emotion just to adapt it, where a human voiceover talent is going to go in and they're going to automatically adjust their voice, whether they're reading for a McDonald's or for an insurance company or for a healthcare company.
And they know as well, like I love that moment where they're, they go through it and they go, no, that's not right. I'm going to do that again. And, you're just like, so it's fascinating. Right. But then there probably is a moment where, or a set of brands who don't care enough. And
Sure.
I'm not going to name anybody,
Yeah.
but like, I think was it System One, or maybe it was Les and Peter. Anyway, did some stuff, and it's like, ad with a cow outperforms most ads. So was it just,
yes, that was the incredible Cost of Dull.
It's Cost of Dull. Yes, that's right.
They looked at ads that were really dull. But look, I think what we found is that for ads that are more short-term, rational based, what we found is that an AI voice actually performs pretty well.
Right.
As you might imagine, with something where you're not as worried about emotional connection. Maybe it's wall-to-wall VO. Maybe it's just price point. In those situations, an AI voice performs well. But again, if there's regulation at some point, then it'll even kill it there.
Oh, it's such
In
a
my opinion.
fascinating space. Well, you're close to it, and you're doing research. Can we? You ended with the 6 measurable parameters for successful sonic brands. Can we just go through those really quickly?
Yes.
Because I thought they were very helpful. A great way to end, I thought, today. Because it gives people going away something to, maybe I can start thinking about that. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think kind of going back to our earlier point where we were talking about, thinking about sonic identity, and somebody saying, well, maybe I don't have the time or the budget to think about creating a particular asset. I think these 6 measurable parameters, and I call them that because you can measure them with research, help create an intentionality about your choices. So the first is congruency. We know the way our brains are wired. We like things that fit together.
Yeah.
We use incongruence all the time in advertising, especially when it's humor, because it sparks our attention. Oh, didn't expect that. But in the context of a brand, we like things to fit. So what are your brand values? What's your brand personality? And what are the other expressions of your brands with color or design or shapes? All of these things are part of brand fit. So finding music, voice, sounds that are congruent with your brand help make that connection. That makes it more familiar, and we tend to like things more.
Yeah.
So congruence first, then memorability, because this is what we're really striving for with ads. In old school, before we had the ability to really research, we thought awareness was enough. Let's just make people aware of the brand. But what we really need to do is build memory structures where the brand can be associated with these other things. And we know that music and sound is a powerful trigger to create memory. So what are you doing with sound to create those memories? And part of that is consistency.
Yeah.
Whether it's a piece of music, whether it's a particular voice, whether you do have something like a mnemonic or a sonic logo, this helps build memory. And as you build that memory, you're building distinctiveness. So that's the third point.
Yeah.
We often confuse differentiation with distinctiveness. You can be different but not distinct.
Yeah.
What you really want as a brand is to be distinct. And that means as you're consistently using these assets over time, you build recognition, not just for the asset, but with the brand. So as you're developing a sonic identity, you want to, as you're developing it, trying to choose or make sounds that are distinct.
Yeah.
But then it's up to the brand making sure that whenever, wherever, and however they can be used, you're using them. So then there's also flexibility, because if you are using these things in multiple contexts, then they need to be flexible enough to adapt to, maybe you need to pull on the heartstrings a little bit more. Maybe you need to motivate and excite. Maybe you have 6 seconds, maybe you have 60, maybe you're in 4 different cultures and you want to play on cultural relevancy. So, a simple mnemonic like ba-da-ba-ba-ba, okay, that's McDonald's. And you know that just with me singing it.
Yeah.
You would know that if you heard it played on a guitar or on a keyboard or on a tuba, because it's built around a melody. It's very flexible. So we've got congruence, we've got distinctiveness, we've got memorability, we have flexibility. Then it needs to be appealing.
Yeah.
You can do all of those things.
People hate it.
People hate it.
Yeah.
So we need to make sure that what we have is appealing. And the benefit of doing all of these other things is that we know that, again, the more familiar something is, we tend to like it more.
Yeah.
So building all of these memory structures and associations and distinctiveness will help lift appeal. And then the last parameter is ownability. And by that, I don't simply mean that you're owning a particular sonic space, a genre of music. What I mean is that you're able to own those properties. Now, that I'm not anti-licensing a piece of music or using a popular song. I think with the right strategy, those things can be very beneficial. But ultimately, you need to build your identity around a property that you own. You own the rights. You own the copyrights to that. Otherwise, you're building equity in a property that at some point, the owner of that property, think about it as renting.
Yeah.
You're renting a property. The landlord happens to look and say, oh, you like that property a lot. You've used it for about 5 years. Oh, I see you've liked it so much, you've kind of added on and you've put in another bathroom, and now there's a second floor that wasn't there before. Guess what? Your rent is about to go up. Yeah. And that happens too many times. You can't afford it, and now you've lost all
that equity.
So those are the 6 measurable parameters.
And the other, on the ownability thing, I was involved again a long time ago with an ad campaign, and we picked a piece of music and we went on air, and another brand came out with a new campaign with the exact same piece of music. Yeah. And this is a small market, and we were like, the brand went nuts. Like, how did you not know this? How did this happen? We were like, well, the person who sold the license shouldn't have done whatever, but it was like those things can happen.
Right. So because if you're negotiating and you might not think to negotiate for exclusivity. And if you want to negotiate for exclusivity, you're going to have to pay more for that. So I mean, there's all kinds of horror stories. Trauma. I still remember
it. Listen, I really appreciate you sticking back to chat to me. It's been amazing.
I could talk all day, obviously, but I don't know that anybody else would want to listen. So I appreciate you hanging with me as long as you have.
No, it's been brilliant, and I just think the space and the opportunity for audio is phenomenal. I'm such a huge fan of it. I've seen the impact it can have. And I think having this today, the Radiocentre event has been brilliant, bringing experts over and having so many different perspectives today, which I really loved. Just really enjoyed that.
It was a great day. Radiocentre Ireland, it was just fantastic program. And I think these kind of events help us think more strategically. And as I close my presentation, as I often do in talking about sonic strategy, I will say sonic strategy doesn't start with your ears. It starts with what's between them. And it's a day like today that kind of not only inspires us with the power of creativity, but also helps us understand from a research perspective ways that we can make creative choices that can stack the deck a little bit more in our favor.
Which is what we all need. Steve, thank you so much. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Thank you. Thanks so much.
Well, fascinating guy. Definitely could have spent a lot longer chatting to Steve about all things that he is doing at SiriusXM. And I just think fascinating to see his perspective on AI. I know Steve's done a ton of research in the area and is really top of the game when it comes to this area. So I think definitely we'll get Steve back to talk about that in a few months' time, because this is a space that is not going away and we have to keep on top of it, and we will do that here, and that's what I call marketing. So as always, if you have enjoyed the episode today, I would love if you can rate or review it, or even share it with some of your colleagues or your family and friends. Maybe they're into sonic audio and sonic branding, and look, we'll see. But honestly, it is one thing that really, really helps in terms of reaching an engaged community of marketers just like you. Massive thanks to Kieran and the team at Radiocentre for having us along to Sounding Out today. A really, really great event. Packed room here at the Mansion House. So really, really enjoyed being here and got so much out of it. I mean, you would leave today and you would just One thing you would do, you would be definitely adding more of your media budget into audio channels, 100%. So hopefully you're inspired to talk to your agencies about doing the same.
If you would like to reach an engaged community of marketing leaders, get in touch with That's What I Call Marketing to discuss sponsorship opportunities.